Victoria Sterling's hand connected with Marcus Thompson's face so hard that her diamond bracelet cut his cheek. The crack echoed through Lenoir Celeste like a gunshot. Every fork froze. Every conversation died. 60 of the wealthiest people in America watched a billionaire CEO assault a black waiter over a single drop of wine. But Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He didn't run. He smiled. And what he said next didn't just shock the restaurant. It destroyed a billion-dollar empire. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The sound wasn't like in the movies. It wasn't a clean, dramatic crack. It was wet, sharp, sickening. A thwack that cut through crystal and conversation and classical music like a blade through silk. Marcus Thompson felt it before he heard it. The impact snapped his head to the right. His cheekbone exploded with heat. Something warm trickled down toward his jaw. Blood, he realized, from where her bracelet had torn the skin. He didn't move. The 1982 Chateau Margaux was still in his hand. Not a single additional drop had spilled. 23 years of discipline. 23 years of learning to control every muscle, every nerve, every instinct. He let the silence stretch. 1 second. 2. 3. Victoria Sterling was breathing hard, her chest heaving beneath her custom Hermès blouse, the one with the single ruby drop of wine that had started all of this. Her hand was still raised, trembling slightly, the massive diamonds on her wrist catching the candlelight. "That's what happens," she hissed, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "when the help doesn't know their place." Marcus slowly, so slowly, turned his head back to face her. The handprint was already blooming across his dark skin, red and angry and perfect. 5 fingers, clear as a signature. But his eyes weren't the eyes of a waiter. They weren't frightened. They weren't humiliated. They weren't even angry. They were patient, like a man who had been waiting 5 years for exactly this moment. "You shouldn't have done that, Miss Sterling." His voice was quiet, calm. It carried across the frozen restaurant like smoke. Victoria's smirk faltered, just for a heartbeat. "Excuse me?" "I said," Marcus set the wine bottle down on the silver trolley with a soft clink. "You shouldn't have done that." "Jean-Pierre!" Victoria snapped her fingers at the manager, who was already rushing over, his face the color of old milk. "Get this man out of my sight. He's fired. He's done. I want him gone before I finish my entree." Jean-Pierre Dubois had managed Lenoir Celeste for 11 years. He had seen celebrities throw tantrums. He had seen politicians make threats. He had seen old money and new money clash in ways that would make tabloid editors weep with joy. But he had never seen anything like the look in Marcus Thompson's eyes. "Mr. Thompson," Dubois said carefully, reaching for Marcus's arm. "Please, come with me. Now." Marcus didn't move. "Miss Sterling," he said, still in that same quiet voice, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer." Victoria laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. "A question? You're asking me a question? Do you have any idea who I am?" "I know exactly who you are." "Then you know I can destroy you. I can make sure you never work in this city again. I can—" "Do you know who Raymond Cross is?" The name landed like a grenade. Victoria's mouth stopped moving. Her face, which had been flushed with victory, went pale, then white, then something close to gray. At the table, James Chen, Victoria's CFO, her right hand, the man everyone assumed she was sleeping with, looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. "What did you say?" Marcus turned to face him. "I asked if she knows Raymond Cross." James was staring at him now, really staring. His brow furrowed, his lips parted. Something was happening behind his eyes. Gears turning, memories surfacing, connections forming. "Wait," James said slowly. "Wait. I know you." "James, don't be ridiculous," Victoria snapped. "He's a waiter. You don't know him." "No." James stood up. His chair scraped against the marble floor. "No, I do know you. I've seen your face somewhere. He stopped. His face went through a transformation that Marcus had imagined 1,000 times. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, horror. "Oh my God." "James, what is it?" Victoria demanded. "What's wrong with you?" James Chen's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Marcus? Marcus Thompson?" The restaurant, which had been frozen in shocked silence, somehow found a deeper level of stillness. It was as if the building itself had stopped breathing. "Hello, James," Marcus said. "It's been a while." Victoria looked between them, her confusion curdling into fear. "James, explain. Now." But James couldn't take his eyes off the waiter with the bleeding cheek and the calm, patient eyes. This is Dr. Marcus Thompson," James's voice cracked. "He's the one who built the Prometheus algorithm. He's the reason Sterling Technologies exists. James swallowed hard. "He's the man you just accused of corporate espionage 5 years ago. The man whose reputation you destroyed. The man everyone thinks is dead." Victoria's hand, the one that had delivered the slap, began to shake. That's impossible. Thompson was a thief. He sold our secrets to—" "I didn't sell anything," Marcus said quietly. "But someone did. Someone planted evidence on my servers. Someone fabricated emails. Someone made sure that when my wife died, when I was drowning in grief, when I couldn't fight back." He took a step closer to the table. "Someone stole everything I built. My research, my reputation, my life." Another step. "And that someone is standing in this restaurant right now." Victoria stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her fallen chair. "This is insane. Jean-Pierre, security! Someone call security!" "I wouldn't do that," Marcus said. "Not yet. Not until you hear what I have to say." "I don't have to hear anything from you." "You're right," Marcus nodded slowly. "You don't have to. But you might want to. Because in about 30 seconds, I'm going to tell James and everyone else in this restaurant exactly what you and Raymond Cross have been planning. And if you run," he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "If you run, the story gets so much worse." Victoria looked around wildly. Every eye in Lenoir Celeste was fixed on her. Phones were out. People were recording. This wasn't just a scene anymore. It was a public execution. "James," she said desperately. "James, you can't believe this. He's clearly unhinged. He's been stalking me. "Have I?" Marcus asked. "Or have I been working here for 6 months, waiting, listening, taking notes?" Victoria's breath caught. 6 months ago, you sat at this very table, table 12. You took a call from your father. You didn't know I was standing 3 feet away, refilling the water glasses. You didn't notice me, because you never notice people like me. Marcus's voice hardened. "But I noticed you, Miss Sterling. I noticed everything." James stepped around the table, positioning himself between Victoria and the door. His face was unreadable, but his body language was clear. He wasn't protecting her. He was containing her. "What did you hear, Marcus?" "I heard her tell her father that the plan was on schedule, that once the IPO went through, they'd have full access, that Raymond Cross was getting impatient, but she could handle it." Victoria shook her head frantically. "That's not... I was talking about investors, about legitimate business. You said, and I quote, "Tell Cross to be patient. After the restructuring, I'll have the backdoor codes, the private servers, everything." The blood drained from James's face. Backdoor codes? There's a parasitic program buried in the Prometheus algorithm, Marcus said. I found it 5 years ago. It's been siphoning data, your projections, your R&D, your financial vulnerabilities, and feeding it directly to Raymond Cross. He's been shorting your stock, selling your innovations to competitors, bleeding the company dry from the inside. That's impossible, Victoria shouted. We had security audits. You had security audits that looked for hammers, Marcus said. This is a scalpel. It's hidden in the original seed code, the code that Raymond Cross provided when he first invested in the company. James looked at Victoria, really looked at her. 5 years of partnership, 5 years of trust, 5 years of building something together. Victoria, he said slowly, tell me this isn't true. James, Tell me. Victoria's face crumpled. It happened all at once. The mask of the powerful CEO, the carefully constructed persona of wealth and competence and control. It all collapsed like a building with its foundation ripped out. He promised, she whispered. Cross promised no one would get hurt. He said it was just business. He said Thompson stole from us first. He said we were just taking back what was ours. I never stole anything, Marcus said. I created the algorithm. It was my life's work. And when I found Cross's back door, when I tried to expose him, his voice caught. For the first time, a crack appeared in his composure. He sent me a video, a live feed of my daughter. She was 7 years old. She was in a hospital bed, waiting for heart surgery. And the message said, "Ghosts can't be missed, but daughters can." The restaurant was absolutely silent. So I ran, Marcus continued. I became a ghost. I changed my name. I took jobs no one would ever associate with a Stanford researcher. Janitor, delivery driver, line cook, waiter. He gestured at his stained uniform. I've been invisible for 5 years, watching, waiting, protecting my daughter, and waiting for the moment when Cross got so arrogant, so confident, that he made a mistake. Marcus looked at Victoria with something that might have been pity. You with a mistake, Miss Sterling. You and your father and your desperation. Cross thought you were his final piece, his key to the kingdom. Instead, you're going to be his downfall. Victoria was crying now. Mascara ran down her cheeks in black rivers. Her $1,000 makeup job was ruined. Her $1 billion reputation was destroyed. What do you want? She sobbed. Money? The algorithm? I'll give you anything. Just please, please don't do this. Marcus reached up and touched his bleeding cheek. What do I want? He thought about Elena, about the car accident that had taken her from him, about the grief that had blinded him while his enemies circled. He thought about Amelia, about her small hand in his during her surgeries, about the fear in her eyes when she asked if Daddy would always come back. He thought about 5 years of anonymity, 5 years of swallowing his pride, 5 years of being invisible while the people who had destroyed him lived in luxury. I want you to understand something, he said finally. I could have exposed you quietly. I could have gone to the FBI, the SEC, the board of directors. I could have done this in a conference room with lawyers present. He leaned closer. But you slapped me, in front of 60 people, because I spilled a single drop of wine on your blouse. You hit me and called me the help, and said I didn't know my place. His voice dropped to a whisper. So I decided that when you fell, everyone would watch. Every person in this room. Every person who sees the videos that are being recorded right now. Every person who reads about this tomorrow and next week and next year. Marcus straightened up. I want justice, Miss Sterling, and I want it to be public. I want every person who ever looked past me, who ever treated me like I was invisible, who ever assumed that a black man in an apron couldn't possibly matter. He smiled. I want them all to remember this moment. The moment they learned that the waiter they ignored was the most dangerous person in the room. Jean-Pierre Dubois cleared his throat nervously. Should I call the police, Mr. Thompson? Marcus nodded. Yes, but not for me. He pointed at Victoria Sterling. For her. Corporate espionage, securities fraud, conspiracy, and, he touched his bleeding cheek again, assault. Victoria collapsed into her chair, sobbing. James Chen pulled out his phone. His hands were steady, but his voice shook. Get the helicopter to the roof, now, full lockdown at headquarters, code Prometheus, and get me a line to the FBI. He looked at Marcus, at the waiter's uniform, at the blood on his cheek, at the 5 years of pain and patience in his eyes. Welcome back, Dr. Thompson, James said quietly. We have work to do. Marcus picked up the folded napkin from the table and pressed it against his wound. Yes, he said. We do. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled like a galaxy of diamonds. 60 floors below, millions of people were living their lives, unaware that everything was about to change. The war had just begun. The napkin against Marcus's cheek was already soaked through with blood. Victoria's bracelet had cut deeper than he'd realized. But he didn't care about the pain. Pain was an old friend. Pain had been his constant companion for 5 years. What mattered now was the look on James Chen's face. James was staring at him like a man watching a corpse climb out of its grave, which, in a way, was exactly what was happening. I need to understand, James said slowly. I need to understand everything, from the beginning. James, we don't have time for... Victoria started. Shut up. James didn't even look at her. You've lost the right to speak. You've lost the right to be in this conversation. The only reason you're not in handcuffs right now is because Marcus hasn't told me to call the police yet. Victoria flinched, like she'd been slapped again. Marcus pulled the napkin away from his cheek and examined the blood. Still flowing, but slower now. He'd need stitches. Later. Much later. You want to know everything? He asked James. I need to know. If what you're saying is true, if Cross has been inside our systems for 7 years, then everything I thought I knew about this company is wrong. Everything I thought I knew about... He glanced at Victoria. About everyone. Marcus nodded slowly. Then sit down. This is going to take a while. James sat, not in his original chair. That was too close to Victoria. He pulled a chair from an adjacent table, positioning himself between Marcus and the door. The other diners had given up any pretense of not watching. Phones were still recording. Whispers filled the restaurant like static. 5 years ago, Marcus began, I was a different man. He could still remember it. The life before. The life that had been stolen from him. I was Dr. Marcus Thompson, Stanford AI Research Lab. I had a wife named Elena. I had a daughter named Amelia. I had a future. The words came easier than he'd expected. He'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the tiny apartment in Queens, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, practicing until the pain became just another fact, just another data point in the story of his destruction. I built the Prometheus algorithm in 18 months. It was everything I had. Every late night, every weekend, every moment I should have been with my family, but wasn't, because I was so close, so damn close to something that would change the world. James was leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. I remember when Victoria first brought the algorithm to the board. She said she'd discovered it, said she'd found this brilliant researcher who wanted to remain anonymous. That part was true, Marcus said. I didn't want my name on it. I'd seen what happened to other researchers who got famous too fast. The scrutiny, the pressure, the way their work became about them instead of the science. I just wanted to build. I wanted to create. He stopped, swallowed hard. I wanted to make something that would matter. Something that would still exist after I was gone. Something my daughter could point to someday and say, "My father built that." Victoria made a sound, a small, choked sob. Marcus ignored her. For 2 years it worked. Victoria was the face. I was the architect. She handled the investors, the board, the media. I handled the code. We were partners. What changed? James asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. Elena died. The words hung in the air like smoke. Car accident. Drunk driver. She was coming home from the grocery store. Amelia was with my mother for the weekend. Elena was alone when... He couldn't finish the sentence. Even after 5 years, he couldn't finish it. I fell apart, he continued after a moment. Completely. Totally. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything except sit in our empty apartment and wonder how I was supposed to raise a daughter alone. How I was supposed to keep going when half of me had been ripped away. James's expression had shifted. The suspicion was still there, but something else had crept in. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. I took a leave of absence. Victoria said she understood. She said to take all the time I needed. She said the company would be fine. And that's when it happened, James said. It wasn't a question. That's when it happened. Marcus nodded. I was gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of grief and therapy, and trying to explain to a 5-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home. And when I finally logged back into the system, he took a breath. Everything was locked. My access codes had been revoked. My files had been moved. And there was a message from the board saying that I was under investigation for selling proprietary technology to foreign competitors. I remember that investigation, James said quietly. Victoria brought it to me. She said she'd found evidence of unauthorized data transfers, emails to accounts in China and Russia, wire transfers to offshore banks. All fabricated, Marcus said. Every single piece of it. I never sent those emails. I never made those transfers. Someone created digital ghosts with my fingerprints and used them to destroy me. But why? James spread his hands. Why would anyone do that? The algorithm was making money. The company was growing. What was the point of framing you? Control. Marcus said the word like it tasted bitter. I was the only person who truly understood the Prometheus algorithm. The only person who could modify it, improve it, or, more importantly, find anything hidden inside it. He looked directly at Victoria. Tell him, Miss Sterling. Tell him about the back door. Victoria was shaking. Her carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. What remained was something small and frightened and desperate. I didn't know, she whispered. Not at first. I swear I didn't know. Didn't know what? James demanded. Cross came to my father 3 years before I met Marcus. Our family's investments were failing. The Sterling name was becoming a liability instead of an asset. We were going to lose everything. The houses, the trust funds, the social standing. Everything that made us who we were. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. Cross offered to help. He had connections, resources. He said he could restore the Sterling fortune, but he needed something in return. Access. Access to emerging technology companies. Access to their systems, their data, their vulnerabilities. "You were a mole," James said. His voice was flat. "Dead." "I was a survivor," Victoria spat back. "You don't understand what it's like. Growing up with everything, and then watching it disappear. Watching your father drink himself to sleep every night because he can't face what he's become. Watching your mother pretend everything's fine while she sells her jewelry piece by piece to pay the staff. So you sold us out instead." "I did what I had to do," Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "Cross said no one would get hurt. He said it was just business. He said a lot of things," Marcus cut in. "And you believed him because believing him was easier than facing what you were doing." Victoria turned to him, her eyes wild. "You don't get to judge me. You don't know what I went through. You don't know." "I know that when I found the back door, when I tried to warn you, you went straight to Cross. I know that within 24 hours, my entire life was destroyed. I know that while I was mourning my wife, you were helping a corporate spy steal my life's work." "I didn't have a choice!" "There's always a choice." Marcus's voice was quiet, but it cut through her screaming like a knife. "You could have come to me. You could have told me the truth. You could have let me help you. Instead, you chose to sacrifice me to save yourself." Victoria collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Marcus turned to James. "That's when I found it. The back door. I was going through the code one night. I still had access then, barely, and I saw something that didn't belong, a subroutine that I hadn't written. It was elegant, subtle, hidden so deep in the architecture that a normal security audit would never find it. What did it do? Everything. It copied every piece of data that passed through the system. Financial projections, research and development, client information, strategic plans. Everything that made Sterling Technologies valuable was being duplicated and sent to an external server. Cross's server. Cross's server. Marcus nodded. "He'd been inside your company from day one, from the moment he provided the seed funding. He never intended to be an investor. He intended to be a parasite." James ran his hands through his hair. He looked like a man who'd just discovered that his house was built on quicksand. "Why didn't you go to the authorities? The FBI? The SEC? Someone must have been able to help." "I tried." Marcus's voice hardened. "I contacted a friend at the bureau, explained what I'd found, sent him preliminary evidence. 2 days later, the investigation into ME was announced. My friend was transferred to a field office in Alaska, and I received a message." "A message?" "On my daughter's tablet, a live video feed. Amelia was sitting in her hospital room. She'd been diagnosed with a congenital heart defect, needed surgery, was terrified and alone because her mother was dead and her father was a mess. And the message said, 'Ghosts can't be missed, but daughters can.'" James's face went gray. "He threatened your daughter." "He showed me what he was capable of. He showed me that no matter where I went, no matter who I talked to, he could reach my family. So I made a choice." Marcus stood, slowly. His knees ached from standing for so many hours during his shift. Another reminder of how far he'd fallen. "I chose to disappear, to become a ghost, to let everyone think I was guilty, or crazy, or dead. Because as long as I was invisible, Amelia was safe." He walked to the window. 60 floors below, the city sparkled like a circuit board. Millions of lives, millions of stories, all of them unaware of the war being fought above them. "I liquidated everything I had, paid for Amelia's surgery, set her up in a private care facility under a different name with security I could trust. And then I vanished." 5 years, James said. 5 years of hiding. 5 years of waiting. Marcus turned back to face him. "I couldn't fight Cross directly. He had too much power, too many connections, too much leverage. But I could watch. I could listen. I could gather evidence. and I could wait for him to make a mistake. He looked at Victoria. You were the mistake. You and your father's desperation. Cross got greedy. He wasn't satisfied with the data anymore. He wanted the whole company. And to get it, he needed someone inside. Someone who could give him the final piece. The backdoor codes, James whispered. The backdoor codes. The private servers. The keys to the kingdom. Once he had those, he could trigger the parasitic code. Crash your stock. Destroy your reputation. Buy the wreckage for pennies on the dollar. And no one would ever know he was behind it. James stood abruptly. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. How long? How long has this been planned? The final phase? About 18 months. Cross has been moving money through shell companies, setting up the acquisition structure, preparing to strike. The IPO wasn't about growth. It was about exposure. The moment Sterling Technologies went public, Cross would have access to a whole new level of data. And Victoria, Marcus shook his head slowly. Victoria was going to hand him the access codes the night before the IPO announcement. Weren't you? Victoria didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was confession enough. James let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a scream. I trusted you. For 5 years I trusted you. I defended you to the board when they questioned your decisions. I covered for you when you disappeared for family obligations. I thought... He stopped, swallowed whatever he'd been about to say. I thought we were building something together. James, please. Victoria reached for him. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to save my family. Can't you understand that? Understand? James jerked away from her touch. You want me to understand why you've been helping a criminal destroy everything we've built? Why you were willing to burn down this company and everyone in it to protect your family's reputation? It wasn't about reputation. It was about survival. So was this, Marcus said quietly. Everything I've done for 5 years has been about survival. The difference is, I didn't destroy other people's lives to do it. Victoria whirled on him. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what Cross is capable of. He would have destroyed us, my father, my mother, everyone I love. I had to protect them. You had to protect them, Marcus repeated. His voice was calm. Too calm. And to do that, you sacrificed me. You sacrificed my reputation. You sacrificed my future. You would have sacrificed this company and everyone who works here. He stepped closer to her. Tell me, Miss Sterling, when you decided to help Cross frame me, did you think about my daughter? Did you think about the 5-year-old girl who had just lost her mother? Did you think about what would happen to her when her father was destroyed? Victoria's face crumpled. I didn't think about... No, you didn't think. Because people like you never do. You see people like me, black men in service uniforms, invisible workers who make your life comfortable. And you don't see people. You see tools, objects, things to be used and discarded. He touched the wound on his cheek. You slapped me tonight because I spilled a drop of wine, a single drop, on a blouse you'll never wear again. And you felt entitled to hit me, to humiliate me, to fire me, because in your mind I was nothing. I was less than nothing. Victoria was crying so hard now that she could barely breathe. But here's the thing, Miss Sterling. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. The nothing you despised, the invisible man you struck, he's the one who's going to bring down everything you and Cross have built. Not because I want revenge, but because it's the right thing to do. He turned to James. We need to move, now. Cross will know something's wrong within the hour. He has people watching Victoria. When she doesn't check in, When she doesn't deliver the codes as planned, he'll go to contingency. And his contingency is scorched earth. James snapped back to operational mode. What does that mean? It means he can't steal the Prometheus algorithm anymore. Not with me back. I'm the only one who can see his code, the only one who can lock him out permanently. So he'll do the next best thing. He'll weaponize it. He'll release the Pandora protocols. The Pandora. James's face went white. Marcus, those protocols were never supposed to be connected to anything. They're theoretical models, doomsday scenarios. Scenarios that are terrifyingly accurate. Infrastructure collapse, financial system manipulation, pandemic modeling that could be used to engineer biological attacks. Everything we built to predict catastrophe could be used to create catastrophe. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He would. And he can. That's why I've been waiting, James. Waiting until Cross committed fully to the plan. Waiting until I could expose not just what he's done, but what he intended to do. And now, Marcus looked at the blood-soaked napkin in his hand. Now he's going to find out that the ghost he created is the one thing he should have been afraid of all along. James pulled out his phone. His fingers were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by something harder, something dangerous. I'm calling the full security team. We're locking down headquarters. No one in or out until we've secured the servers. Not enough. Marcus shook his head. Cross has people inside. He's had years to plant them. You can't trust anyone except the people in this room. Then what do you suggest? Marcus smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I suggest we stop playing defense. I suggest we take the fight to him. How? Marcus looked at Victoria. She was still crying, still broken, still the woman who had helped destroy his life. But she was also the only person alive who knew the full extent of Cross's network. The only person who could get them inside. Miss Sterling, he said quietly, you have a choice to make. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. You can continue to protect Cross. You can refuse to cooperate. And when the FBI arrests you for corporate espionage and securities fraud, you can spend the next 20 years in a federal prison, explaining to your parents why their daughter is a convicted criminal. Victoria's sobbing intensified. Or you can help us. You can tell us everything you know, every contact, every shell company, every piece of evidence. And maybe, we can make sure that when this is over, you're remembered as the woman who helped bring down Raymond Cross, instead of the woman who helped him rise. James started to object. Marcus, we can't just— Yes, we can. Marcus's voice was firm. I spent 5 years learning to be invisible. I learned something in that time, James. I learned that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into people who make choices and people who let choices be made for them. He looked at Victoria. Miss Sterling let choices be made for her. She let her father's desperation and Cross's manipulation turn her into a weapon. But weapons can be pointed in any direction. And right now, I need a weapon that knows everything about Raymond Cross. Victoria wiped her face with trembling hands. If I help you, if I tell you everything, what happens to my family? That depends on what you tell us. She closed her eyes. For a long moment, she was silent. The restaurant around them had gone from frozen shock to frantic whispers. Someone was going to call the real police soon. Someone was going to leak this to the press. The clock was ticking. The servers, Victoria said finally. Her voice was hoarse, broken. Cross keeps everything on servers in Switzerland. But there's a backup. A local backup, in case he needs to move fast. Where? Victoria looked up at Marcus. Her mascara had run down to her chin. Her blouse was still stained with wine. She looked nothing like the powerful CEO who had slapped him 20 minutes ago. There's a data center in New Jersey, across the river. It's disguised as a pharmaceutical research facility, but the entire basement is dedicated to Cross's operations. That's where the back door feeds to. That's where all the stolen data goes. James was already typing on his phone. I can have a team there in 30 minutes. No teams, Marcus shook his head. Cross will have it monitored. The moment he sees Sterling Technologies security approaching, he'll trigger a wipe. Everything will be gone. Then how do we get in? Marcus smiled that unpleasant smile again. Cross thinks I'm dead. Cross thinks he won 5 years ago. Cross has no idea that the ghost he created has been watching him, learning him, preparing for exactly this moment. He pulled off his waiter's apron and dropped it on the table. I'm going to walk right in, and I'm going to take back everything he stole from me. The helicopter touched down on the roof of Sterling Technologies headquarters at 11:47 p.m. Marcus hadn't been in this building for 5 years. The last time he'd walked through these doors, he'd been Dr. Marcus Thompson, chief architect of the most valuable algorithm in the world. He'd had a corner office on the 42nd floor. He'd had a team of 20 researchers who hung on his every word. He'd had a future. Now he was returning as a ghost. James led the way through the rooftop access door, his security badge beeping as it unlocked. Behind them, 2 of his most trusted security personnel flanked Victoria, who hadn't stopped shaking since they'd left the restaurant. The war room is on 40, James said as they entered the elevator. I've got our cyber forensics team standing by. They're the only people I trust completely. Been with me since before Victoria joined the company. Marcus nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the data center in New Jersey, about the servers that held 5 years of stolen secrets, about Raymond Cross, sitting in whatever gilded hole he called home, completely unaware that his carefully constructed empire was about to collapse. How much time do we have? Marcus asked. James checked his watch. Victoria was supposed to check in with Cross at midnight. That's 13 minutes from now. When she doesn't call, he'll know something's wrong. And then? And then he'll start covering his tracks, wiping servers, destroying evidence, disappearing. Marcus shook his head. He won't disappear. Not Cross. He's too arrogant for that. He'll assume Victoria got cold feet. He'll send someone to check on her. When they find out she's with us, he'll accelerate the timeline. The Pandora Protocols? The Pandora Protocols. The elevator doors opened onto the 40th floor. Marcus stepped out and stopped. It was different. Everything was different. The layout had been redesigned. The walls had been repainted. The furniture had been replaced. But underneath all of that, underneath the cosmetic changes and the corporate rebranding, he could still feel the bones of the place he'd helped build. You okay? James asked quietly. I spent 3 years of my life in this building, Marcus said. I missed my daughter's first steps because I was debugging code in that conference room. I missed her first words because I was optimizing algorithms in that server room. I gave everything I had to this company. He looked at James. And then it was taken from me, all of it, in one day. James didn't have a response to that. What could he say? Sorry didn't begin to cover it. Sorry was just a word, and words meant nothing against 5 years of exile. The war room is this way, James said finally. They walked down the corridor in silence. Victoria stumbled once, her designer heels catching on the carpet, and one of the security guards caught her arm. She didn't thank him. She didn't even look at him. She was somewhere else entirely, lost in a nightmare of her own making. The war room was exactly what its name suggested. A fortified conference room with reinforced walls, signal-blocking technology, and enough computing power to rival a small government. 6 people were already inside, gathered around a central table covered with monitors and keyboards. "Everyone," James announced as they entered. "This is Dr. Marcus Thompson." The reaction was immediate. Eyes went wide, jaws dropped. One woman actually stood up from her chair, her hand flying to her mouth. "Dr. Thompson?" she whispered. "But everyone said you were—" "Dead?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Not quite, though not for lack of trying." James gestured to the woman who had spoken. "Marcus, this is Sarah Chen. No relation," he added with a thin smile. "She's been running our cybersecurity division for the past 3 years. If anyone can help us find Cross's back door, it's her." Sarah was still staring at Marcus like she'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, she had. "I studied your work in graduate school," she said. "The Prometheus algorithm it was revolutionary. When you disappeared, I didn't disappear," Marcus said gently. "I was erased. There's a difference. And right now, I need your help to undo that erasure." Sarah nodded slowly. The shock was fading, replaced by something harder: determination. "Tell me what you need." Marcus moved to the central console. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, muscle memory from a life that felt like someone else's dream. 5 years ago, I found a parasitic subroutine hidden in the core architecture of the Prometheus algorithm. It was designed to copy and transmit sensitive data to an external server. I traced the transmission to a shell company owned by Raymond Cross. "Cross?" One of the other technicians leaned forward. "The venture capitalist? He's been out of the tech scene for years." "No," Marcus said. "He's been invisible for years. There's a difference. He's been operating through proxies, shell companies, and people like Ms. Sterling here." All eyes turned to Victoria, who was sitting in a corner chair, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "She's going to help us," James said firmly. "That's all you need to know." Sarah turned back to her monitors. "If there's a back door, I can find it. But it'll take time, hours, maybe days. Cross would have hidden it deep." "We don't have hours," Marcus said. "We don't have days. We have minutes. Cross is going to realize something's wrong at midnight. When he does, he'll either wipe his servers or trigger the Pandora protocols. Either way, we lose everything." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He'd played this scenario out in his head 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Every night for 5 years, lying awake in his tiny apartment, he'd imagined this moment. The moment when he finally got to fight back. "We don't find the back door," he said finally. "We use it." Sarah frowned. "Use it? How?" "The parasitic code isn't just a one-way street. It's a connection, a tunnel between our systems and Cross's servers. For 5 years, he's been using that tunnel to steal from us. Tonight, we're going to use it to steal from him." James stepped forward. "You can do that? You can reverse the data flow?" "I wrote the original architecture. I know every line of code, every vulnerability, every hidden pathway. Cross modified my work, but he didn't understand it. Not really. He just knew it was valuable. He didn't know why." Marcus's fingers began moving across the keyboard. After 5 years of washing dishes and carrying plates, they were stiff, slower than they used to be. But the knowledge was still there, buried deep in his neurons like a second language. "Sarah, I need you to isolate the Prometheus core from the main network. No external connections except the ones I authorize. Can you do that?" "Already on it." Her fingers flew across her own keyboard. "Firewall protocols activating now." "James, I need Victoria's phone, the encrypted one she uses to communicate with Cross." James looked at Victoria. "Give it to him." Victoria's hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the phone out of her purse. She held it out to Marcus like it was a bomb that might explode at any moment. "The passcode," Marcus said. 814203. Victoria whispered. My father's birthday. Marcus entered the code. The phone unlocked, revealing a messaging app he didn't recognize. The interface was clean, minimal, clearly designed for people who didn't want their communications traced.
He checks in every night at midnight,
Victoria said. Her voice was barely audible.
If I don't send the right message, he'll know something's wrong.
What's the right message?
The flowers are blooming. It means everything is on schedule. If I send anything else, or if I don't send anything at all, he'll trigger the contingency.
Marcus checked the time. 11:54 p.m. 6 minutes. What happens if we send the message? James asked. Buy ourselves some time? It buys us until morning, Victoria said. He'll expect me to deliver the access codes at 6 a.m. If I don't show up, or if I show up with the wrong information, he'll know. Marcus stared at the phone in his hand. 6 minutes to decide. 6 minutes to choose between deception and confrontation. Sarah, he said slowly, how long would you need to trace an outgoing signal from this phone, to find Cross's actual location? Sarah's eyes lit up. If he's using standard encryption, maybe 30 seconds. If he's using military-grade protocols, maybe 2 minutes. But he'd know. The moment we start tracing, he'd know something was wrong. But we'd have his location. We'd have his location. Marcus looked at James. What do you think? James's jaw tightened. I think Raymond Cross has been bleeding this company dry for 7 years. I think he destroyed your life, threatened your daughter, and corrupted the woman I thought I knew. I think if we give him time to prepare, he'll find a way to slip through our fingers, like he always does. And if we go after him now, then we end this. Tonight. Marcus nodded slowly. He looked at Victoria. I'm going to send Cross a message. Not the message he's expecting. I'm going to tell him exactly who I am and exactly what I know. And then I'm going to give him a choice. Surrender, or watch everything he's built burn to the ground. Victoria's eyes went wide. You can't. He'll destroy everything. He'll release the Pandora protocols. Millions of people could die. No, Marcus shook his head. He won't. Because I'm going to offer him something he wants more than revenge. What could you possibly offer him? Marcus smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd worn in 5 years. Me. The room went silent. You? James grabbed Marcus's arm. You can't be serious. He'll kill you. The moment you're within reach, he won't kill me. Not immediately. Cross doesn't want me dead. He wants me to suffer. He wants me to watch him win. He spent 5 years thinking he already won. But deep down, he knows the truth. He knows that as long as I'm alive, as long as I remember what he did, his victory isn't complete. Marcus gently removed James's hand from his arm. Cross is a collector. He collects companies. He collects secrets. He collects victories. And right now, I'm the one trophy he's never been able to claim. If I offer myself up, if I give him the chance to finally defeat me in person, he'll take it. He won't be able to help himself. And then what? You just let him capture you? Let him torture you? No. Then I do what I've been doing for 5 years. I survive. I wait. And when he's close enough, when he thinks he's won, Marcus turned back to the keyboard. I show him what happens when you underestimate a ghost. He began typing. The message appeared on the screen, character by character. Each word a bullet aimed at the heart of the man who had destroyed his life. Cross, this is Marcus Thompson. I'm alive. I know everything. The back door. The Pandora protocols. Victoria. All of it. You have 1 hour to meet me at the New Jersey facility. Come alone. If you send anyone else, if you trigger any fail-safes, I will release everything I know to the FBI the SEC, and every news organization in the country. Your choice. His finger hovered over the send button.
Marcus?
Sarah's voice was quiet.
Are you sure about this?
He thought about Elena, about the way she used to laugh at his terrible jokes, about the way she'd fall asleep on his shoulder while he worked late into the night, about the last thing she'd said to him before she left for the grocery store.
Don't forget, we need milk.
He thought about Amelia, about her tiny hand gripping his finger in the hospital room after her surgery, about the way she'd looked at him with complete trust, complete faith that her daddy would always protect her, about the birthday cards he'd missed, the school plays he'd watched from a distance, the childhood he'd sacrificed to keep her safe. He thought about 5 years of invisibility, 5 years of swallowing his pride, 5 years of being nothing so that someday, somehow, he could be something again. I'm sure, he said. He pressed send. The message whooshed away into the digital void. For a moment, nothing happened. The room held its breath. Then Sarah's monitors lit up like Christmas trees.
He's responding,
she said, her voice tight with excitement.
Oh my God. He's dropping his encryption. He's coming straight at us.
Can you trace him?
I've got him. He's in Manhattan, Upper East Side, 82nd and Park.
James was already on his phone. I'm calling the FBI. We can have agents there in... No. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. He hasn't agreed to meet. He's just testing. He's trying to figure out if this is real, or if someone's playing games with him. Another message appeared on the screen. Sarah read it aloud. Thompson died 5 years ago. Whoever you are, you're making a mistake you won't live to regret. Marcus typed his response without hesitation. The back door is in subroutine 7 Alpha Delta, hidden inside the Prometheus core architecture. It uses a modified RSA encryption key that changes every 72 hours. The current key expires tomorrow at 6 a.m. Should I continue, or do you believe me now? Send. The silence stretched longer this time. 1 minute. 2. Marcus could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but his hands were steady. He'd waited 5 years for this moment. He could wait a few more minutes. Then the response came. 1 hour. Come alone. If I see anyone else, the Pandora protocols go live. Millions will die. Their blood will be on your hands, not mine. Marcus exhaled slowly. He took the bait. James grabbed his arm again. Marcus, you can't do this alone. It's suicide. I'm not planning to go alone. I'm planning to go first. He turned to Sarah. How long until you can access Cross's servers through the back door? If you can keep him distracted for 30 minutes, maybe 40, I can get inside, download everything, and lock him out permanently. That's all I need, 30 minutes. And what happens after 30 minutes? James demanded. What happens when Cross realizes you're stalling? What happens when he decides you're not worth the trouble and just kills you? Marcus met his eyes. Then you make sure my daughter knows the truth. You make sure she knows her father didn't abandon her. You make sure she knows that everything I did, every sacrifice I made, was for her. James's face crumpled. Marcus. I'm not planning to die tonight, James. But if I do, if this is how it ends, at least it ends on my terms, not his. Never his. He started walking toward the door. Marcus, wait! Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. Everyone turned to look at her. She was standing now, her mascara-streaked face twisted with something that might have been guilt, or might have been desperation. I'll go with you. James laughed bitterly. Hugh, after everything you've done, because of everything I've done, Victoria took a shaky step forward. Cross trusts me, or at least he thinks he controls me. If I show up with Marcus, he'll think I've brought him as a gift, a peace offering. He'll let his guard down. And why would you do that? Marcus asked. What's in it for you? Victoria's eyes filled with fresh tears. Nothing. There's nothing in it for me. My life is over either way. My reputation, my family, everything I've worked for. It's all gone. She took another step closer. But maybe if I help you stop him, maybe someday my daughter won't have to be ashamed of my name. Maybe someday she'll understand that her mother wasn't always a monster. That in the end, when it mattered most, she did the right thing. You have a daughter? Marcus asked. Sophie. She's 4. She's with my mother tonight. She doesn't know anything about any of this. For a long moment, Marcus just stared at her. This was the woman who had helped destroy his life. The woman who had slapped him across the face and called him nothing. The woman who had chosen money and status and survival over truth and integrity and honor. And she was a mother, just like Elena had been. If you come with me, Marcus said slowly, you do exactly what I say. No improvisation, no heroics. If things go wrong, you run. You get out. You go home to your daughter and you never look back. Victoria nodded frantically. Yes, whatever you say, I swear. Marcus turned to James. Give us 45 minutes. If you don't hear from me by then, call everyone. FBI, CIA, National Guard. Burn Cross's world to the ground and salt the earth so nothing ever grows there again. James pulled him into a hug. It was awkward and unexpected, and over almost before it began. But it meant something. It meant that, despite everything, despite 5 years of silence and suspicion, they were still on the same side. Don't die, James said gruffly. We've got a lot of work to do. Marcus nodded. I've survived this long. I'm not going to stop now. He walked out of the war room, Victoria trailing behind him like a shadow. The elevator was waiting. The roof was waiting. The helicopter was waiting. And somewhere across the river, Raymond Cross was waiting too. The ghost was finally going home. The car pulled up to the New Jersey facility at 12:47 a.m. Marcus had insisted on driving himself, refusing James's offer of a security escort. Cross had said, "Come alone." Cross would be watching. Any sign of backup, and millions of people could die. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the helicopter pad. Neither had Marcus. There was nothing left to say. The facility looked exactly as Victoria had described it. A nondescript pharmaceutical research building, surrounded by a chain-link fence and security cameras. Nothing about it suggested that inside its basement lay the nerve center of the largest corporate espionage operation in American history. Marcus killed the engine. Last chance, he said quietly. You can still walk away. Victoria shook her head. No, I can't. Why not? She turned to look at him. In the dim light from the dashboard, her face looked older, tired, human. Because for 5 years, I told myself I was just surviving. I told myself I didn't have a choice. I told myself that what I was doing wasn't really wrong, because Cross was the one pulling the strings, not me. She laughed bitterly. But that was a lie. It was always a lie. I had choices. I just kept making the wrong ones, over and over and over again. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When I was hiding, he said finally, I used to think about all the choices I could have made differently. What if I'd been more careful? What if I'd gone to the authorities sooner? What if I'd protected myself instead of trusting the people around me? He opened the car door. But you know what I realized? The past is just a story we tell ourselves. The only choice that matters is the one you make right now, in this moment. Everything else is just noise. Victoria nodded slowly. She opened her own door and stepped out into the cold night air. Then let's go make the right choice. They walked toward the entrance together. A single security guard sat in a booth by the front gate, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone screen. He looked up as they approached. "Facility's closed," he said, not even bothering to stand up. "Raymond Cross is expecting us," Victoria said. Her voice had steadied. The CEO mask was back in place, even if it didn't quite fit anymore. "Tell him Victoria Sterling is here, with a gift." The guard's expression changed. He set down his phone and picked up a walkie-talkie. "Sir, Victoria Sterling is at the gate. She says she has a gift?" Static. Then a voice Marcus would have recognized anywhere. Smooth, cultured, dripping with a confidence that bordered on contempt. "Let them in. Escort them to the lower level. And Thomas, if either of them tries anything, shoot them both." "Yes, sir." The gate buzzed open. The walk through the facility felt endless. Their footsteps echoed in empty corridors. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Everything smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. The guard led them to an elevator marked "Restricted Access" and pressed his palm against a biometric scanner. The doors slid open. "Down," he said simply. Marcus and Victoria stepped inside. The doors closed. The elevator began to descend. 30 minutes, Marcus murmured, barely moving his lips. "That's all Sarah needs. Keep him talking. Keep him focused on me. Don't let him check his systems." Victoria gave an almost imperceptible nod. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. And there he was. Raymond Cross looked exactly as Marcus remembered him. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He had the face of a grandfather, warm and welcoming, with crow's feet around his eyes that suggested a lifetime of smiling. It was all a lie. Every wrinkle, every smile, every carefully cultivated appearance of benevolence. "Marcus Thompson," Cross said. His voice was like honey poured over broken glass. "My God, you actually came. You sound surprised." "Surprised? No. Impressed, perhaps. I spent a great deal of money trying to find you after you disappeared. Hired the best investigators on 3 continents. And all this time, you were right under my nose, working as a waiter." Cross laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of amusement and something that sounded almost like admiration. A waiter. The man who built the Prometheus algorithm, washing dishes and carrying plates. The indignity of it must have been excruciating. You'd be surprised what you can endure when you have something worth protecting. Cross's smile faded slightly. "Ah, yes, your daughter. Amelia, isn't it? Lovely child. I trust she's recovered from her heart surgery?" Marcus's fists clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice steady. "She's fine. No thanks to you. On the contrary, I could have had her eliminated at any time. The fact that she's still alive is entirely thanks to my restraint. Consider it a professional courtesy between colleagues." "We were never colleagues." "Weren't we?" Cross spread his hands. "We both built empires, Marcus. We both understand that greatness requires sacrifice. The only difference between us is that I was willing to make the hard choices, and you were too sentimental." He turned to Victoria, who was standing slightly behind Marcus, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Speaking of sentimentality, Victoria, my dear, I must say I'm disappointed. 5 years of careful cultivation, and you crack at the first sign of pressure?" Victoria flinched, but didn't respond. "She brought me to you," Marcus said. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was the access codes. What I wanted was control of Sterling Technologies. What I wanted was to finally own the algorithm you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. I created the Prometheus algorithm. Every line of code, every function, every subroutine. It came from my mind, my work, my sacrifice. You just tried to take credit for it. Cross's pleasant expression hardened. I funded you. I gave you the resources you needed. Without my initial investment, your precious algorithm would still be a theoretical concept gathering dust in some Stanford server room. You didn't fund me. You infected me. You planted a backdoor in the seed code you provided. You were stealing from me before I even knew your name. Stealing? Cross laughed again, but there was no warmth in it this time. I was protecting my investment. You think I would pour millions of dollars into a project without ensuring I could recover my costs? That's not theft, Marcus. That's business. Business. Marcus spat the word. You call destroying my reputation business? Framing me for corporate espionage? Threatening my daughter's life? That's not business. That's psychopathy. Cross shrugged. Labels, words, they mean nothing in the real world. What matters is power. Who has it? Who doesn't? And right now, Marcus, you're standing in my facility, surrounded by my people, completely at my mercy. He stepped closer. So let's dispense with the moral posturing, shall we? You came here for a reason. You sent me that message for a reason. What is it you actually want? Marcus met his eyes. I want you to understand something. Understand what? That you've already lost. Cross blinked. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Lost? I have your algorithm. I have your reputation. I have your former partner standing right beside you, ready to testify that you've been stalking her for months. And you think I've lost? I think you've been so focused on winning that you forgot to check if the game was still being played. Marcus pulled out his phone, held it up so Cross could see the screen. 3 minutes ago, Sarah Chen accessed your servers through the back door you so cleverly installed. Right now, she's downloading every file, every document, every piece of evidence of your crimes. The shell companies, the wire transfers, the communications with Victoria's father. All of it. Cross's face went pale. That's impossible. The back door is encrypted. No one can access it without understanding the architecture? Without knowing the original code inside and out? Marcus smiled. I built that architecture, Cross. I wrote that code. And while you were busy stealing my work, you forgot one crucial detail. You never understood it. Not really. You just saw a tool, a weapon. You didn't see the man who made it. Cross lunged for a panel on the wall. His hands slammed against a red button. Security! Get down here! Now! They're not coming, Victoria said quietly. Cross spun to face her. What? I gave Marcus the security codes before we came in. He transmitted them to James Chen 20 minutes ago. Your guards have been detained. The color drained from Cross's face completely. You treacherous little... Careful, Marcus stepped between them. You might want to save your energy. You're going to need it for the FBI agents who are on their way right now. Cross's composure cracked. For the first time since Marcus had known him, the mask of urbane sophistication slipped away, revealing something desperate and ugly beneath. You think this is over? You think you've won? He laughed wildly. The Pandora protocols are still active. One command from me, and every dangerous algorithm in my system goes live. Financial markets collapse. Infrastructure fails. Millions die. No, Marcus shook his head. They don't. You can't stop it. The protocols are embedded too deep. Even your precious Sarah Chen can't. I already stopped them. Cross froze. What? The Pandora protocols. I disabled them 6 months ago. The words hung in the air like a verdict. That's
That's not possible. You would have needed direct access to my servers. I would have needed someone inside your organization. Someone with high-level clearance. Someone who could physically access your most secure systems without raising suspicion. Marcus glanced at Victoria. Someone like your most trusted mole. Cross turned to Victoria, his face twisting with rage and betrayal. You gave him access? Victoria's voice was steady now, stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. 6 months ago, Marcus approached me. He told me what you were really planning. Not just corporate espionage, not just stealing algorithms. The Pandora protocols, the potential for mass casualties. The sheer scope of destruction you were willing to unleash. She took a step toward Cross. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was lying, manipulating me. But then I looked. I really looked. And I saw what you'd built. What you were going to do. So you betrayed me. Cross's voice was barely a whisper. After everything I did for your family. After I saved you from ruin. You didn't save us. You enslaved us. You turned my father into your puppet. You turned me into your weapon. And you were going to use both of us as scapegoats when everything fell apart. You ungrateful! I'm a mother, Victoria cut him off. I have a daughter, a 4-year-old girl who looks at me like I'm her hero. And I will never let her grow up in a world that you destroyed. Cross lunged at her. His hand closed around her throat before Marcus could react. Then you can die knowing you failed. Marcus grabbed Cross's arm, trying to pull him away. But Cross was stronger than he looked, fueled by rage and desperation and the knowledge that everything he'd built was crumbling around him. Victoria's face was turning red. Her hands clawed at Cross's grip. "Let her go!" Marcus shouted. "Why should I? Why should I let any of you walk out of here? If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me." Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He stopped pulling and started pushing. He shoved Cross backward with all his strength. The older man stumbled, his grip on Victoria's throat breaking. He crashed into a bank of computer servers, his head striking metal with a sickening crack. Cross slumped to the ground, dazed but conscious. Victoria collapsed against Marcus, gasping for air. Red marks were already forming on her neck where Cross's fingers had been. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked. She nodded, unable to speak. Cross groaned on the floor. He was trying to get up, but his movements were sluggish and uncoordinated. "It's over," Marcus said, standing over him. "The FBI will be here in minutes. Your servers are being seized as we speak. Every crime you've committed for the past decade is now in the hands of federal prosecutors." Cross looked up at him. Blood was trickling from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were still defiant. "You think you've won," he rasped. "You think this is victory. But you don't understand, Marcus. You've never understood." "Understood what?" "This isn't about money. It was never about money. It's about power, about control, about proving that people like you, idealists, dreamers, believers, will always lose to people like me." "People like you?" Marcus crouched down so he was eye level with Cross. "You mean cowards? Parasites? Men who build nothing and destroy everything? Men who see the world as it is, not as they wish it would be." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You know what I learned in 5 years of being invisible? I learned that the world isn't divided into winners and losers. It's divided into people who build and people who tear down. People who create and people who steal. People who love and people who fear." He stood up. "You've spent your whole life afraid, Cross. Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of being the man behind the curtain instead of the one pulling the strings. And that fear made you powerful. But it also made you alone." Cross said nothing.
His eyes were fixed on some point in the middle distance. "I have a daughter who loves me," Marcus continued. "I have friends who believed in me even when I disappeared. I have a legacy that will outlive us both. What do you have? Money? Power? And who will mourn you when you're gone? Who will remember your name with anything but contempt?" The sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor above. Multiple people, moving fast. "That would be the FBI," Marcus said. "I'd wish you luck, but I don't think luck is going to help you where you're going." He turned his back on Raymond Cross and walked toward Victoria. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Then let's get out of here. We've got a long night ahead of us." They moved toward the elevator just as the first FBI agents burst through the doors, weapons drawn. "Dr. Thompson?" The lead agent, a woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, lowered her gun. "We received a call from James Chen. Said you might need backup." "I appreciate that, though we managed okay on our own." The agent looked past him at Cross, who was being surrounded by her team. "Raymond Cross, I've been wanting to meet this man for a long time." "He's all yours. I believe you'll find everything you need on his servers. My colleague Sarah Chen should be able to walk you through the evidence." The agent nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She held out her hand. "Dr. Thompson, on behalf of the Bureau, I want to say, we're sorry. 5 years ago, we should have listened. We should have investigated. We let you down." Marcus looked at her hand for a long moment. Then he took it. "You can make it up to me by putting him away forever. Count on it." Marcus and Victoria walked out of the facility together. The night air hit them like a wave of cold water, washing away the staleness of the underground bunker. James was waiting by a black SUV, his face tight with worry. "Marcus, thank God! Are you—" "I'm fine. We're both fine." James looked at Victoria. Something complicated passed between them. Pain. Betrayal. And beneath it all, the faintest glimmer of something that might, someday, become forgiveness. "The servers?" Marcus asked. "Sarah got everything. Terabytes of data, financial records, communication logs, evidence of crimes going back almost a decade. Cross is finished." Marcus nodded slowly. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. "And the Pandora protocols?" "Disabled. Permanently. Sarah said she'd never seen code that elegant. Apparently, whatever you did 6 months ago didn't just neutralize the threat. It turned Cross's own weapons into evidence against him." "That was the plan." James let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "You magnificent bastard. You planned this whole thing from the beginning, didn't you? The restaurant, the slap, all of it." Marcus shook his head. "I planned the ending. The slap was just luck. Bad luck that turned into good luck." He touched the cut on his cheek, which had finally stopped bleeding. "Though I could have done without this part." Victoria spoke for the first time since they'd left the facility. "What happens now?" Marcus looked at her. "Now, you go home to your daughter. You hold her tight. You tell her you love her, and tomorrow, you start making better choices." "And you? What will you do?" Marcus looked up at the sky. It was starting to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. "I'm going to see my daughter," he said. "I'm going to tell her that the bad times are over, that Daddy's coming home." He paused. "And then, I'm going to sleep for about a week." James put a hand on his shoulder. "You've earned it. You've earned everything. Welcome back to the land of the living, Dr. Thompson." Marcus smiled, his first real smile in 5 years. "It's good to be back." The sun was rising over Manhattan when Marcus finally allowed himself to breathe. He sat in the back of James's SUV, watching the city come to life through the tinted windows. Streets that had been empty an hour ago were now filling with early commuters. Coffee shops were opening their doors. Delivery trucks were making their rounds. The world was waking up, completely unaware that it had just been saved from catastrophe. Victoria had been taken to a secure location by the FBI. She would spend the next several weeks being debriefed, her testimony forming the backbone of the case against Raymond Cross. Her future was uncertain. She had committed serious crimes, even if she'd helped stop worse ones. But at least she had a future. At least she would see her daughter again. James was on the phone in the front seat, fielding calls from lawyers and board members and government officials. The news had already broken. Every financial channel was running the story. Sterling Technologies stock had been frozen, pending investigation. Raymond Cross had been arrested. And somewhere in all that chaos, the name Marcus Thompson was being spoken for the first time in 5 years. Not as a criminal, not as a traitor, not as a ghost, as a hero. Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, tired in his bones, tired in his soul. 5 years of waiting, of planning, of surviving. It had taken everything he had. And now that it was over, now that the weight had finally lifted, he wasn't sure what was left underneath. Marcus. James had finished his call and was looking back at him from the front seat. We're about 20 minutes from the care facility. Are you sure you don't want to rest first? Clean up. That cut on your face really should be looked at. Marcus shook his head. I've waited 5 years. I'm not waiting another minute. James nodded. He understood. Of course he understood. There's something I need to tell you, James said after a moment. Something I should have said back at the restaurant, before everything went crazy. What? 5 years ago, when the investigation started, when they told me you'd been selling secrets, I believed them. Not right away, not completely, but eventually, I let myself believe it. It was easier than fighting, easier than asking questions, easier than admitting that I'd missed something so important happening right under my nose. James's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Marcus. I should have fought for you. I should have looked deeper. I should have been your friend when you needed one most. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You know what I thought about during those first months of hiding? I thought about all the people who'd let me down. Victoria, the board, the colleagues who turned their backs. I made a list in my head, a long list of everyone who'd failed me. He leaned forward. Your name was on that list, James. For a long time, it was right at the top. I was angry. I was bitter. I blamed you almost as much as I blamed Cross. James flinched, but didn't look away. But then something changed, Marcus continued. I watched my daughter fight for her life in that hospital room. I watched her come out of surgery, weak and scared, but still fighting. And I realized something. Anger is heavy. Bitterness is heavy. Carrying that list around, adding names to it, letting it grow, it was killing me. Slowly, quietly, but killing me all the same. He sat back. So I burned the list, not literally, but in my mind. I let it go. All of it. The anger, the blame, the need for people to apologize for failing me. Why? Because my daughter needed a father who was whole, not someone broken by resentment, not someone poisoned by the past. She needed me to be present, to be alive, to be hopeful about the future. And I couldn't do that if I was still carrying the weight of everyone who'd let me down. James's eyes were glistening. I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness. Maybe not. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. And for Amelia. And for the life I want to live from here on out. Marcus reached forward and put a hand on James's shoulder. We all make mistakes. We all fail the people we love. What matters is what we do next. And tonight, You were there, when it counted. When I needed someone to trust, you showed up." James couldn't speak. He just nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. The SUV pulled off the highway and onto a smaller road that wound through rolling hills dotted with autumn trees. The care facility appeared around a bend, a beautiful Victorian-style building surrounded by gardens and walking paths. It looked more like a country estate than a medical center, which was exactly why Marcus had chosen it. "I'll wait here," James said as they pulled into the parking lot. "Take as long as you need." Marcus stepped out of the car. His legs felt unsteady. His heart was pounding harder than it had during the confrontation with Cross. This was the moment he'd dreamed about for 5 years, the moment he'd sacrificed everything to make possible. And now that it was here, he was terrified. What if she didn't recognize him? What if she was angry? What if she'd moved on, built a life without him, learned to live as if he were already dead? What if he'd waited too long? He pushed through the front doors anyway. A nurse at the reception desk looked up and smiled. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Amelia Thompson, room 204. The nurse's expression changed. Recognition. Surprise. A flash of something that looked like joy. "Dr. Thompson, is that really you? We've been watching the news all morning. Everyone here is—" "Please," Marcus said. "I just want to see my daughter." The nurse nodded quickly. Of course. She's in the garden. She always goes there in the mornings. Says it helps her think." Marcus walked through the facility in a daze, past the common room where elderly patients were watching television, past the cafeteria where staff were setting up for breakfast, past the physical therapy wing where the sounds of machines and encouraging voices filtered through closed doors. And then he was at the garden entrance. He pushed through the glass doors and stepped outside. The garden was beautiful. Flowers were blooming everywhere, defying the autumn chill. A fountain bubbled in the center. Birds sang in the trees, and sitting on a bench by the fountain, her face turned toward the rising sun, was a girl. She was 12 now, taller than he remembered. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a ponytail. She was wearing a sweater that was too big for her, probably borrowed from one of the nurses, and reading a book. Marcus couldn't move. 5 years. 5 years since he'd held her. 5 years since he'd heard her voice. 5 years since he'd been her father in anything but name. And now she was right there, 30 feet away. All he had to do was walk. He took a step, then another. His shoes crunched on the gravel path. Amelia looked up from her book. For a moment, she just stared. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, disbelief, hope, that mirrored everything Marcus was feeling. "Daddy?" The word was barely a whisper, but it carried across the garden like a symphony. "Hi, baby girl." Amelia dropped her book. She stood up so fast that she knocked over a plant pot beside the bench. She didn't notice. She didn't care. She ran. Marcus ran too. They collided in the middle of the garden, his arms wrapping around her, her face pressing into his chest, both of them crying too hard to speak. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" She kept saying it over and over, like she was afraid he would disappear if she stopped. "I'm here," he was saying it over and over too. "I'm here. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm never going anywhere again." They stood there for a long time. Minutes, maybe hours. Marcus lost track. All that mattered was the weight of his daughter in his arms, the smell of her shampoo, the sound of her heartbeat against his chest. His little girl, his whole world. Safe, alive, home. Eventually, Amelia pulled back. Her face was red and wet with tears, but she was smiling.
the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen. "They said you were dead," she said. "Everyone said you were dead."
But I didn't believe them. I knew you'd come back. I knew it.
"How? How did you know?"
Amelia reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. She held it up so Marcus could see. It was a letter, one of the hundreds he'd written to her during his years in hiding. Letters he'd sent through anonymous channels, never signed, never with a return address, but always with the same closing. From someone who loves you more than all the stars in the sky.
"I kept every one," Amelia said. "I read them every night before bed. And I knew that someday you'd come back for me." Marcus couldn't speak. He just pulled her close again, holding on like he would never let go. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry. For everything. For leaving. For missing so much. For not being there when you needed me." "It's okay, Daddy." "It's not okay. It's not—" "Daddy."
Amelia pulled back and looked up at him with eyes that were far too wise for a 12-year-old. "I know you were protecting me. I know you were keeping me safe. The nurses told me when I got older. They told me about the bad man who wanted to hurt us. They told me that you went away so he couldn't find me." She reached up and touched the cut on his face. "Did the bad man do this?" "No, someone else. But it's over now. All of it. The bad man is going to prison. He can't hurt us anymore. No one can."
"Promise?"
"I promise." Amelia nodded slowly. Then she took his hand and started leading him toward the bench.
"Come sit with me. I want to show you my book. It's about a girl who goes on adventures and saves the world. Kind of like what you did, right?"
Marcus laughed. It was a strange sound, rusty from disuse, but it felt good. It felt like coming back to life. "Yeah," he said. "I guess it is." They sat on the bench together, Amelia tucked under his arm, and she started telling him about the book, about school, about her friends at the facility, about the dreams she'd had and the plans she'd made, and the future she wanted to build. Marcus listened to every word. He memorized the sound of her voice. He savored each moment like a man who had been starving and was finally being allowed to eat. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The garden filled with other patients and visitors. But Marcus didn't notice any of them. There was only Amelia. Only his daughter. Only this moment he'd fought so hard to reach. Finally, a nurse came out to tell them that breakfast was being served.
"Daddy, will you stay?"
Amelia asked.
"Will you eat with me?"
"I'll stay as long as you want."
"Forever?"
Marcus smiled. "Forever." They walked into the cafeteria together, hand in hand. The staff all stopped to stare. They'd seen the news. They knew who he was. But Marcus ignored them. Let them look. Let the whole world look. He didn't care about anything except the girl beside him. After breakfast, Marcus called James to give him an update. Then he called Sarah Chen to thank her for everything she'd done. Then he called the FBI to schedule his first official debrief. The next several weeks were chaos. Raymond Cross's trial became the biggest story in the country. Every day brought new revelations, new evidence, new testimony from witnesses who had been afraid to speak for years. The scope of his crimes was staggering. Not just corporate espionage, but bribery, extortion, and conspiracy to commit acts of domestic terrorism. The Pandora Protocols alone would have caused billions of dollars in damage and potentially thousands of deaths. Cross was convicted on 47 counts. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He would die in prison, alone and forgotten, exactly as Marcus had predicted.
Victoria Sterling testified against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. She served 18 months in a minimum security facility, then was released on probation. She never returned to the business world. Instead, she started a foundation to help victims of corporate fraud rebuild their lives. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could ever fully redeem what she'd done. But it was a start. Her daughter Sophie visited her every weekend. They were rebuilding their relationship, slowly, painfully, one conversation at a time. James Chen took over as CEO of Sterling Technologies. His first act was to rename the company. It was now called Thompson Chen Industries. His second act was to offer Marcus his old job back. Marcus turned him down. "I spent 3 years of my life building algorithms," he explained when James asked why. "I missed my daughter's childhood. I missed my wife's last years. I traded my family for my work, and I told myself it was worth it because the work mattered." He shook his head. "It wasn't worth it. Nothing is worth that. I'm done building empires, James. I just want to be a father." James understood. Of course he did. Instead of returning to the tech world, Marcus bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood upstate. He brought Amelia home for the first time since she was 7 years old. He cooked her breakfast every morning. He helped her with her homework every night. He was there for every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. He was present. Finally. Completely. The way he should have been all along. The cut on his cheek healed, but it left a scar, a thin white line that ran from his cheekbone to his jaw. Amelia asked him about it once, and he told her the truth. A woman had slapped him, and her bracelet had cut him. "Why did she slap you?" Amelia asked. "Because she didn't see me. She looked right at me, but she didn't see who I really was." "That's sad." "It is, but it taught me something important." "What?" Marcus pulled his daughter close. "It taught me that the people who matter are the ones who really see you. Not your title, not your money, not your reputation. Just you. And if you're lucky enough to find those people, you hold on to them. You never let them go." Amelia hugged him back. "I see you, Daddy." "I know you do, baby girl. I know you do." 1 year later, on the anniversary of the night at Le Noir Celeste, Marcus received an invitation. The restaurant was hosting the special event, a private dinner to celebrate the foundation of the Elena Thompson Memorial Fund, a charity Marcus had established to provide heart surgery for children whose families couldn't afford it. He almost didn't go. The memories were still too fresh. The scar on his cheek still ached sometimes when the weather changed. But Amelia convinced him. "Mom would have wanted you to go," she said. "She would have been so proud of you, Daddy." "Of everything you've done." So Marcus put on a suit, the first one he'd worn since that night, and drove into the city with his daughter beside him. Le Noir Celeste looked exactly the same. The same floor-to-ceiling windows, the same crystal chandeliers, the same hushed elegance that made you feel like you were floating above the world. But everything was different too. This time, Marcus didn't enter through the service entrance. He walked through the front door. The maitre d' greeted him by name. The staff smiled and nodded as he passed. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer a ghost. He was a man who had fought his way back from the dead. Table 12 was waiting for them. The same table where Victoria Sterling had slapped him. The same table where his whole world had changed. Marcus sat down with his daughter across from him. They ordered food. They talked and laughed. They watched the sun set over the city and remembered the woman who should have been there with them. At the end of the meal, the waiter brought out a small box. Inside was a single photograph. Marcus, Elena, and baby Amelia, taken 12 years ago when everything was still possible
and nothing had yet been lost. "Where did this come from?" Marcus asked, his voice thick. "A woman dropped it off earlier today," the waiter said. "She said you'd know who sent it." There was a note attached to the back of the photograph. Marcus turned it over and read, "For everything I took from you, I can never repay. But I hope this helps you remember what you were fighting for. V. Victoria." Marcus stared at the photograph for a long time. Elena's smile, Amelia's tiny hands, his own face, young and hopeful, before the world had taught him how much it cost to love someone. "Daddy?" Amelia reached across the table and took his hand. "Are you okay?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at the young woman she was becoming, at the future stretching out before them, full of possibility and promise. "Yeah," he said, "I'm okay." And for the first time in 5 years, he meant it. That night, Marcus stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Elena was watching. He was sure of it. Watching over them, proud of who they'd become. "We made it," he whispered to the darkness. "We made it, baby. Just like I promised." The stars didn't answer. They never did. But Marcus felt something settle in his chest. A peace he hadn't known in years. A weight finally lifting. He had lost everything. His career, his reputation, his wife. 5 years of his daughter's life. And he had gotten it back. Not all of it. Some things were gone forever. But the things that mattered, love, family, hope, those were still there. Those had never really left. He was no longer Dr. Marcus Thompson, the architect of the Prometheus algorithm. He was no longer Marcus the waiter, the invisible man, the ghost. He was just Marcus, father, survivor, fighter. A man who had been knocked down by the world and had gotten back up again. A man who had learned that the measure of a life isn't what you build, or what you earn, or what you achieve. The measure of a life is what you protect. And Marcus Thompson had protected what mattered most. His daughter was safe. His name was cleared. His enemies were defeated. The ghost had finally come home. And he was never going to leave again.